Kara here from The Kara Golden Show. If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters: renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations, so you can act quickly before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by great brands like OpenAI, L'Oreal, Salesforce, and so many others. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.
We hold these ideas that we have or dreams that we have so close and we don't let them out. That's like stagnant water. The ripples don't flow with that. That just becomes stagnant. And that's one of the things that I really encourage people is to talk about ideas and to be crazy with them sometimes too. Maybe they won't lead to anything, or maybe they won't lead anything next week, but you don't know what's going to happen in months or years or what the impact is going to be.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 333. Thanks for coming back. As you settle into this moment, you might notice how often the most meaningful changes in life don't start with a grand plan. They start with something much smaller: a thought, a question, a quiet moment of courage. Today's conversation invites you to consider how one small action, taken without certainty, can quietly change everything that follows. My guest today is Sabine Hutchison, author of Beyond the Ladder, founder of the Ripple Network, and someone whose life story moves effortlessly from science to magic, from the U.S. to Germany, and from personal courage to collective impact. Sabine brought a simple napkin into this conversation, just a few words. One ripple can change the tide. And as you listen, you may begin to reflect on the ripples in your own life, the ones that you've noticed and the ones you didn't realize were forming at the time. Moments when you spoke something out loud, asked for help, or chose presence over certainty. This episode isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about becoming aware of motion. Because when the awareness shifts, possibility expands. So as you listen, you might ask yourself, what ripple am I creating right now simply by being here? Let's dive in. Sabine Hutchison, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Well, I am super happy to be here as we wind up 2025.
Yeah, that's right. So for anybody listening,
well, maybe not for you, but for me, one of the last recordings for the year.
This is going to be my last recording of the year, so it's momentous. We can say Happy New Year for everybody listening. We're recording this on December 30th, 2025, so it's going to be my last podcast of the year, and what a wonderful way to spend it with you. I said you're in Hamburg, and my father spent some time there, coming out of India before his master's. Before his second master's, actually, I should say, and he did his first sort of international work term there. Fond memories. I remember visiting there, and you've got a really great New Year's tradition that you're going to be embarking on with a bunch of expats, including Canadians. So there's a
Look at
Indo-Canadian, connection to Hamburg, where you are at, and your tradition is like this Michelin experience that you're going to do with your
we're
friends.
starting it this year. Actually, we would get together and cook, but this year we've decided we love food, and so we're going to try to do Michelin level entrees tomorrow night. So let's see how it goes.
Oh, that's great.
I'll let you know.
Make sure that you submit your entrance to the Michelin star, and you never know. Maybe start something new.
We will see.
You also shared a really interesting napkin with me, and I'm really looking forward to diving in. It says, one ripple can change the tide. Why did you share that with me?
It actually, even hearing you say that, it gives me goosebumps, because I just believe that I'm a big fan. I talk a lot about ripples. Ripples are something that I've connected with, and I love the concept of them. They can be small, they can be waves, they can start 30 years ago and come back and have an impact on your life today. So I just believe these ripples that we make, regardless of the size of them and how big the stone or the drop is that goes into the water, the impact can be incredible. And the reason that I wrote that is that one of the most impactful stories of my life was actually asking for help from someone, and that was a significant ripple in my life that that even continues going today.
So let's sort of talk about this, right? You said the concept of a ripple. I think people are fixated on the aesthetic of a ripple, and when I first think about it, I think about that, a pebble dropping into a pond and the ripple that it creates. And another image that just sort of comes to mind is how Steven Spielberg really orchestrated the ripple that appears in the mug when the dinosaurs start first appearing nearby, right? The wave pattern was really specifically orchestrated. Let's start about where this started for you. You talked about a ripple that could have been 30 years ago. What was that?
There are even ones before, but one of the most significant ones for me was when I was in college. I had great parents. I have two sisters. My parents are, they've worked hard for us. My mom is actually from Germany and moved to the States with my dad when I was a baby, and also had an incredible life of just going for it and working really hard. And so education was important for them. For us, I was the first in my family to go to college, and they helped how they could, but I also had to take student loans. And my senior year, I was working in a restaurant in Maryville, Tennessee. And I became very close with the owners of the restaurant. They were running it, Tom and Nan Taylor. And one evening after a shift, we were chatting. I was like, there has to be some rich person out there that wants to help me this final year. So all I have to do is work here, and I don't have to do my second job, because I was studying chemistry and I needed to do my thesis and a lot of extra work. And he said, well, how much are you talking about? And he said, put a budget together. I might have something for you. I was like, what? That was one of these grandiose ideas that you toss out there, one of those little stones. And it came back and had a huge impact on me, because he actually did find someone that supported me my senior year in college financially. And, it wasn't a huge amount, but it allowed me to only work one job and to really enjoy my senior year. And that experience actually inspired me. I took a course to do a TED Talk, and this coming back. I took a course to do a TED Talk, and that is kind of one of the key stories in my TED Talk that I did.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. So you're in college.
I'm in college.
And there's an immigrant story I want to get to in a second about your mom going from Germany to the U.S. But you're in college. You're in your senior year, and you just out this idea.
Boom.
It just pops out. Just pops out.
Pops out. Yep. I have a tendency to do that. Yeah. I pop a lot.
What a powerful thing, right? First of all, you popped out an idea. And I think this is a really thing that, the ripple can come from a stone that we just cast, not even thinking about where it could go.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But what ended up happening is that Tom Taylor picks up this stone and says, hey, maybe I can do something with this.
Yeah.
And goes off and finds somebody that you didn't even know.
Exactly. Well, the story, there's a different story ending to that, but he did find someone.
So he found somebody, and they helped a little bit. That's an amazing thing. How often is it? I mean, you've had a varied career, and we're going to get into some of that, but how often is it that so many people that you see don't just cast out that help that they need from the universe, right? They don't just say, hey, I could use some help here. Because the person, we often think out the person that we're saying that we need help to is the person who has to help. But that's not the way it worked out for you at all.
No. And it doesn't. And I think that this has been such a big ripple for me, in that it's taught me to throw out those grandiose ideas. And I do that regularly. So I talk about things because I believe, and it's instilled this way of being with me. And when I encourage other people to talk about what your dreams are and what you want, because even if the person that you're talking to may not have a solution or an idea or a connection, they may talk to someone else, and then that may come back to you. So I think so often we hold these ideas that we have or dreams that we have so close, and we don't let them out. And that can really, that's like stagnant water. The ripples don't flow with that. That just becomes stagnant. And that's one of the things that I really encourage people, is to talk about ideas and to be crazy with them sometimes too. Maybe they won't lead to anything, or maybe they won't lead anything next week, but you don't know what's going to happen in months or years, or what the impact is going to be. So I think that that's one of the things that I've really learned and that I've done. And it's helped me so much in my career, even moving to another country and asking for help, and, asking for things where people are like, I can't believe you even talk about this, but things have been impactful, and I've had positive experiences because of that.
Yeah, and one of the things that's also, this idea of the ripple is really important. Casting of the stone is really important, because it's not just the size of the stone that impacts the size of the ripple, right? It's the trajectory. There's a lot of different factors that can come to play. So sometimes we can think of something as being very small, but they can be very impactful.
Huge.
Can they not?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like sometimes when you're a child, you skip stones, and then that can also cause a ripple. But sometimes when you're little too, you get the biggest rock and you throw it in, and then that can, there can be significant ones, but oftentimes it's the small things that you share with somebody. A couple of months ago, I was at the grocery store, and there was somebody in Germany. You buy bread, and there's like a bakery piece, and somebody didn't have enough money, and I knew that they just didn't have enough with them, and the credit card system wasn't working, and so I gave them enough to, I don't know, it was like €5. It wasn't very much, right, to buy his breakfast and to carry it on. But I think that first of all, that's happened to me. So somebody has been kind to me that way, but I think that person is now going to help someone else. And then that's also another ripple that keeps going. And you hope that it perpetuates. And this also acts of kindness that you think it's no big deal. It's €5, but the impact can actually be also significant if it keeps going.
Yeah. And it's not so much that you're doing it to guarantee that outcome or force that outcome, but it's to create the possibility. And that's the power of the ripple, right? The ripple is the possibility. So let's back up.
I love that. The ripple is the possibility. That's nice.
Right. And it repeats. The possibility repeats, and it repeats, and it repeats. So let's dial this back. Working in Maryville, Tennessee, you're in your senior year, and now you've found yourself in another part of the world. What's the story? How did you get from Tennessee to Germany?
Well, that's another wild little ripple that happened. A good friend of mine that I studied with in Tennessee, had a good job. I was working in the chemical industry in Salt Lake City, Utah. And he came, my friend Steve came to visit me, and he was working for the magician David Copperfield. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? Just traveling around and just being, kind of free. And I thought, that'd be really cool. I said, all right, does he have any jobs open? And Steve was like, Sabine, are you kidding me? He goes, you've got a house, you've got a life here. What are you talking about? And I was like, I think I need to do this. And I ended up getting a job. I interviewed, and I ended up being a business assistant for David Copperfield. And I sold my house. I sold my car. I put all my stuff in storage, and I packed 2 suitcases, and I went on tour. And the first stop was Stockholm, Sweden. And then my gaze met another man's gaze. And that was it. It was literally love at first sight. And he was German from, guess where? Hamburg. And I toured for a while, and it was a blast. But we fell madly in love also really quickly. And then I decided to move to Germany. Also had no plan. I didn't speak German at that time, although my mother's German. I didn't speak German growing up. And then I ended up here. So that was the step to Europe, and that's been 28 years. So it's been a long time.
So this sounds a little wild, right, Sabine? I mean,
it is
you're a chemical engineer in Salt Lake City, and then I wrote down that. What did your parents think when you came up? Because this sounds like I've got this professional career in Salt Lake City. I'm going away to join the circus.
Yeah, exactly.
Like quite literally.
Literally.
And then not only did you go run away to join the circus, you're running the circus because you're, the business manager for David Copperfield. Who if people don't understand who David Copperfield is, Google search him because he was growing up one of the most entertaining magicians of our time. Right? I mean, he was the Harry Houdini of our time, walking through the Great Wall of China. All kinds of crazy stunts that he created and made a generation of people believe in magic again.
Exactly.
Which
really
is really
true.
quite amazing. So you've run away to join the circus, and
I ran away to join the circus. Yeah, I did. And my parents, I also something that has just really stuck with me. It's like also asking for help when you need it. Is that I never wanted to live life with regrets. I didn't want to look back at my life and think, should I have done that? Should I? Should I have
run away into the circus?
Should I have run? Yeah. And then I think just all the experiences that I have, and also just asking for help and not being afraid. I think that those have all taught me just to not be afraid and just to try. And my parents were really pretty cool. First, they thought I was, I'd lost it just a little bit. And then, when I said goodbye, they were like, listen, you always have a place here. So even though you're buying a one-way ticket, you can always come back. And they're like, if it doesn't work, you come back. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You still have your degree, you still have your experiences, and you can start over.
Well, and that itself was a ripple, right? That ripple of safety.
That's right.
Must have carried you for some distance, because you knew that you had the safety of their arms to fall back to if you needed it.
Yep,
did that make a difference to you?
Right. Yes, it definitely did. And also this sense of, we have one of the other podcasts, one of the other episodes that you had, there was a gentleman that talked about labels. And that really resonated with me as well, as how we label things, because we can, in a situation like that, if I were to have gone back, this label of being a failure or not succeeded. And I think that that's something that I also encourage people not to do, to not label things that way. So, and my parents didn't label it as if it doesn't work. They were like, you have a place to come to. So not this idea that I would fail or it would be a negative thing if I were to come back. They just said, we're here. Like you said, open arms. And I think that that's just such an important way and an important message that I received. And that made it for me feel okay.
Because you can also, one of the things that I remember hearing recently, I've got 3 teenage kids, and one of the things that I do a lot of is update my parenting skills. And one of the things that they talk about is not parenting to the negative, parent to the positive, right? So, if things don't work out, no, doesn't matter if they work out or not.
Doesn't matter.
You've always got a place, which is a beautiful way, beautiful reframe, and a powerful opportunity in the way we lead, not just at home, but elsewhere. That's really powerful. So you embarked a life of or you lived a life of possibility, which was really inspired by this idea that you didn't want to miss out on things. And it took you from science to magic. And how did you blend the two of them after that?
After that,
did magic have a role in what you did after that?
I don't know, maybe. I felt pretty lucky and magical when I stepped into the world here. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't speak German. Back then, this was 28 years ago, and this is significantly different than nowadays because German, hardly anyone spoke English back then. Now it's much.
Kara here from The Kara Golden Show. If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters: renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations, so you can act quickly before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by great brands like OpenAI, L'Oreal, Salesforce, and so many others. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.
More common, but back then, really no one did. And I had to try to, go to interviews and try to sell myself. Well, I could say Guten Tag, and that was about it. So selling myself wasn't an option. And so the magic piece, I think when I got a first job, a friend of my now husband's, introduced me to a lab, actually. So I went back into the scientific space. So I started working at a lab in Hamburg. So there was a bit of magic there because the guy hired me. He actually had done his postdoc in La Jolla. So he spoke a little bit of English. So that was a big relief for me. So yeah, a little bit of magic dust was there too.
So you went back into science and followed that for a while, but that's not what you're doing now.
No, it is a bit now. I started a company with a friend of mine 13 years ago, and we also support biotech companies. So we're still a bit in that space where we support companies who are embarking on clinical research and bringing new medications to the market. But I've also veered off a bit there, and I've written a book. And I've also started that beautiful word again, the Ripple Network, which is a space where the work that I do is focused on supporting women. So the book is called Beyond the Ladder. And the Ripple Network is also a platform where women are encouraged to use their voices and speak and learn to speak. So the whole TED Talk thing came back into that, and actually recorded, call them Ripple Talks. So these ideas of ripples and impacts that we make. So it's all come kind of full circle.
Well, circle again, another pattern this out in your story. So, but let's talk about this because you were a woman in science before there was a lot of awareness of how bringing women into STEM and how there were structural barriers to encouraging women to go into STEM. So you didn't even see those barriers. You went into that naturally beforehand, and have let that inform some of the work you're doing today.
Absolutely.
Outwards. But you did this sort of repeatedly because, as an Anglophone living in Germany, not speaking the language in STEM. So you sort of you stacked up the barriers along the way. So how has the Ripple Network helped you live your experience forward and again, create that ripple effect for other people? What have you seen change?
One of the things that from the original, where we started this conversation was with Tom and with the support that he gave. And so I do tell the story in my Ripple Talk. So if anyone's interested to have a look, but it ended up being Tom was the one that was helping finance me. So I didn't know that until the end. And his words to me when I found out why, when we actually, I'd asked for a meeting with the person that was helping me, and it ended up being him. He said also his father also was in Maryville, Tennessee, and there was a wealthy woman that helped his dad go to college because he couldn't afford it. And so this idea of paying forward in these ripples, and she said, you need to do this for others. You need to help others. So this whole idea about she didn't want any money back. She wanted him to have this mindset. And so that's what Tom said to me as well. Keep this mindset of being there for people and supporting people. And that's what I think is so important with what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing with the book and also with the Ripple Network, is providing an opportunity, to support women specifically, because I still do see a lot of issues there. Although, we've come a long way, there's still a long ways to go. And that's why this is so important for me, because it's a way to eventually, I'd like it to be obviously financially successful. I mean, that's, we all need to also make a living, but I also want it to be affordable, and I want to be able to, again, kind of pay it forward and to help women succeed also in their careers. It's really important for me.
It's interesting that it's all started then with a woman too, right? Because it was a wealthy woman who supported Tom's father.
Dad. Yeah.
So why do you think Tom kept that from you when he offered the help?
Yeah. Yeah. Why did he keep it from me? We didn't even talk. Well, he just said that he didn't, because I was still working for them as well, he didn't want it to have an impact. On our relationship, or he didn't want me to see him at that time differently or to be overly grateful. He just didn't want that. And he wanted it to, again, kind of be under the radar. And I know that he's done things for other people as well. So it just was the way that he wants to give, is that, he doesn't like to necessarily show it publicly or, sing it from the rooftops.
One of the things that I'm really struck by in your story is that, obviously there was the ripple that Tom's father received, from the wealthy woman who supported his education, that then Tom paid forward, that you're bringing forward as well. Do you think that we all have these ripples around us all the time, and it's something that we need to notice more? Because they're happening.
Mm-hmm.
And in your case, you've become very conscious of these, and we're telling a story where they happened repeatedly. But isn't it possible that they're always happening, and it's up for us to be sensitive enough to see them?
Absolutely. I think that is such a key piece. And I believe too that we're so bombarded with information, and we rarely find time just to be still with ourselves. And because we have so much happening around us, I believe definitely there are things happening constantly around us, and we don't see it because we're not in tune with it. I'm a big believer of intuition and kind of listening to what's happening in your body and what's happening around you. And if you can take a bit more time and just to focus on your awareness and to see what's happening, they're everywhere. You see things, sometimes it's just incredible. Something will happen and sometimes it's just someone picking up or sending you a message that you just need that day. We all have that, right? You're having a rough day, and I don't know, someone calls you and just says something to you, and it's just like, oh God, did I need to hear that today? So I do believe that they're everywhere, but I think we can lose track, or we're just not as aware of that these are these ripples that are happening all around us. So I think awareness is key.
So how do you ground yourself in that awareness? Is that a conscious effort today? Is that something that you do consciously, or is that something that is unconscious?
It's a lot of work to get, because you rush. Or for me, I should speak for myself. I used to say this a lot of the time. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to go do this. I'm just going to go do this. And I've tried to stop that, because I'm not just going to do anything. I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it more consciously. I think because we're such in this race, it feels like a race sometimes that we're in. It's like warp speed that we're in. And I think for me, I've tried to slow it down a little bit. I have a notebook that in the mornings I do a little bit of breath work, and I write 2 things down in a notebook, and I try to do it every day. I don't do it every day, but I do it as often as I can. And I write something that I'm grateful for. And then I write something that I want to focus on or my intention for the day. And over the last month, my intention for every day has been be present. Be present in the situations that you're in. Be present in the conversations that you're in. Be present. And that's how I become more aware and more focused and more in tune with things that are happening around me. But for me, it takes work to do that, and it is a conscious effort. I think it's becoming less conscious. It's becoming a bit more unconscious, but it was a very conscious path there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I've been a journaler for, I don't know, a decade plus. And mine is very similarly structured to yours. It's evolved over time, but I notice even if it's one day that I don't get my journaling done in the morning, and I have to get it in. Like even if it's later in the day, I need to get to that place where I do that. And for me, one of the great tools has been my Remarkable for that. It makes it much more portable.
Yeah.
So people don't know, it's a digital, or it's like an iPad, but it's not connected to anything. So you can just take digital notes and handwritten notes and have literally hundreds of notebooks in one place. So that is, even though it's the benefits are unconscious, but the effort is conscious. It is something definitely. That is every single day.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that we talked about this, because even for someone who is authored a book about it, who has founded a network to help women understand the value of being in this frame of mind, all of these things are part of your journey, but it's a conscious effort to stay there, right? It is an important thing. And if we're not cleaning that lens and staying aware, we're going to miss the ripple that's coming for us.
You will. Yeah. And then they just come washing around, and then you're like, hey, wait a minute, why did that happen? Where if you were a bit more aware, you would understand, and you would be a bit more in tune with it, and maybe even be a bit more open to feedback or help, or sometimes there's subtle ripples. And if you're not in tune and you're not aware, they may just go by. Maybe it'll come back, but I think this awareness is really important.
I think it's huge, and let's not skirt past that, because I think it's really valuable to have a conversation about. Sometimes when we're standing in the waves, we'll sit there and say, "Why are these waves hitting me? Why is this happening to me?" And it seems like you're very intentional about, this is not happening to me, this is happening for me.
Yeah.
And you use and you've said this several times. I've heard you use your words very carefully. I believe this is happening for me. I believe that there's a ripple. I believe that this has power. You're attaching meaning to things in a positive, future-oriented direction on purpose. And that is an intentional, conscious effort, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely
that's
is.
Great. So let's talk about the work that you're doing with and for women right now. Why do you think it's even more important now than it's been over the last little while? You spoke very passionately about it, and I want to make sure that we talk about it.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that, if you look at again this idea of these ripples, there have been a lot, and it's men too, but there have been a lot of women that have pushed forward for me to be here on this podcast with you. I feel like I stand, and I've said this before too, I'm standing on the shoulders of so many women that have pushed for me to be able to vote, that have pushed for me to be able to open a bank account without having, a man sign for it, or for me to be able to buy a house. And, a lot of these things only happened, I think it was like in the 80s. Was
in some
the
cases,
80s or the 90s. In some countries that women couldn't even still, there was like voting in Switzerland, and I've forgotten exactly what it was, but it's not that long ago. I think in the 70s was when the first woman ran in the Boston Marathon, and that's not so long ago. So we've made strides, but we do see things kind of shifting back, with, especially if we talk about diversity, and inclusion. I think that right now we are taking some steps back. And so I feel if we don't talk about these things and we don't create awareness, that's a dangerous place to be. I did a workshop for some women oncologists a month ago, and one of them told me that she was in an interview to work in a clinic, and the director of the clinic was a gentleman, and he said to her, "Why are we even talking about salary? Doesn't your husband make enough money?" And I was like, whoa, you've experienced this? And I said, I expected her to say this was, 15 years ago. She said, Sabine, this was last year. It was last year. And so that's why I believe that this topic is still so important, because again, if we stop talking about it, the awareness stops and the movement stops, and we can take too many steps back. And so that's why I believe it's so important, because we don't always hear things. My husband, he comes from it from a perspective where he doesn't think that way. And for him, it's so foreign that conversations like this are happening, but they are still happening. And he wouldn't be aware of it if it wasn't for me. And so that's why we have to keep this dialogue going, because some people, it's just, they're not aware because they're not in the situations to hear these conversations that we struggle with. I think that's why
I think it's really powerful.
Forge forward.
Well, my wife and I recently watched The Widow Clicquot, which is a Netflix docudrama diarizing the story of Veuve Clicquot and how it came about, the great champagne brand, and how it was almost taken away from her during the Napoleonic era because Napoleonic law forbade a woman to own a business.
Yeah.
And obviously, her methods that she developed in that period of time are essentially the methods used by the champagne industry
today
in France and the sparkling wine industry globally.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to really think about how important that is. And your points are really great, because in the 60s and 70s, many of these rights became entrenched in the United States and elsewhere around the world, including in Canada. The civil codes really being changed in the 60s to remove the rights of discrimination around gender.
Yeah.
So women couldn't own property, and it would be okay to say, no, you can't own this because you're a woman.
Right.
And it took women elevating women, and it's great that you bring that up. One thing that I even noticed in our podcast here is that there was a time when I needed to think about, I need to have some women on, because it's a bunch of guys that are coming on the podcast all the time.
Yeah.
And now I find that that's not the case. It's very naturally much more even between men and women as guests. And I think having female voices on the podcast is really important, because perspective is, when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee that I don't see the world the same way that you did, for a variety of reasons. And having that diversity of perspective is really important to learning. So I think all of those things are very true. But doesn't that also, to a certain degree, put us in a position where we can feel a little relaxed about it? And by being relaxed, we tend downhill back to old habits. And I think that's sort of what you were intimating, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the thing. And I think it's with anything. It's like with our habits. If we get too relaxed, once you start working out and you're like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good and watching, what I'm eating, I'm taking care of myself. And then you start to slip and slip and slip. And it's easy to fall back into those old habits. And it's the same with this topic. If we don't talk about it, and sometimes I open up conversations. Also, if I'm speaking somewhere, I was like, I'm going to talk about something, and I know that there are going to be some eye rolls, because people are like, here we go again, talking about diversity and equality and equity. And I was like, well, roll your eyes, because we're still going to talk about it, because there's still issues. There's still, if you look at women's health topics, they're not studied as much as males, and it's important, and we just have to keep talking about it. And that's where we have to push ourselves through and to keep this going, and to call out when we see situations happening, to stand up and to not allow it. So that's what all of us can do. If you don't be quiet. If you see something, doesn't mean that everyone has to march on the streets. It's not for everyone, but I do think it's important for you to raise your children in a way that they're respectful, and that the way that they think about, equality and equity in a relationship. Those are ripples too. How you raise your children, huge.
Yeah. So in 1929, there was a landmark case in Canada where women were defined as persons for the first time, right? It was found in, so 1920, less than 100 years ago. I think that's significant. So when
yeah, that is significant.
It is significant, right? So when you think about standing on the shoulders of others for a lot of different things, I think that what I do, what you do, would not be possible had not been for many people to pave the road for people to be judged on their merit, on what they bring to the table, and not who they are, which is really powerful. And if not for that, you would not have had your opportunity with David Copperfield, right?
No.
I mean, to go from being working in a lab, and then the next minute you're working maybe in a different kind of lab, in a magic lab.
The magic lab. Exactly.
So this is the part of the conversation where, in evoking that kind of appreciation, I go back to a napkin that we received 11 years ago from a great friend of the show. His name is John Rulin. He said, what you appreciate appreciates. And what he meant by that is when you give your appreciation to someone, they appreciate and value, not just for you, but for the world. And that's a ripple. That's a ripple that I think you can align with. That's something that you received from Tom, you received from your parents, you've received many times over. So let me ask you, who would you like to appreciate right now? Who'd you like to shout out?
I would like to shout out to my dad. It's his birthday today, so I just spoke to him a little while ago. And my dad taught us to do, because there are 3 girls, so he taught us to really be able to do anything. He bought us the chemistry sets, the footballs, and also the Barbie camper. So we were raised, we had our Barbie camper in the middle of a racetrack. So that's what he instilled in us. Again, this idea that you can do anything. He taught us to build fences, how to set spark plugs for those people that could still know what that is. You can't do that in most cars anymore. So big shout out for him for also making me feel comfortable and just trying anything.
That's wonderful. What a great shout out. Thanks for joining me, Sabine.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was such a pleasure.
As we come to the close of this conversation, you may find yourself noticing something subtle. How a single moment remembered differently can begin to feel larger than it once did. Sabine reminded us that change doesn't require certainty, and it doesn't wait for permission, and it rarely announces itself when it arrives. Sometimes it begins with a sentence spoken out loud, a question asked without knowing the answer, or a small act of kindness that moves forward quietly and then keeps moving. One ripple can change the tide. And as you reflect on this episode, you might ask yourself, what ripple have I already set into motion without realizing it? And what ripple am I being invited to create next? If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to Paper Napkin Wisdom on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else. Leave a review, and most important, share this episode with someone who who may be standing at the edge of a quiet decision and needs a ripple of support from you. And maybe, just for a moment, grab a napkin and write down the smallest action you're willing to take this week, or even the biggest action you're willing to take this week. Not to force an outcome, but to create motion. Because when intention meets action, clarity follows. Thanks for listening, and remember, one idea, one napkin, one shift, one ripple at a time. That's how big tides begin. Make it a great day.